focus on a great product or service and you won't go wrong. Like marketing tip, like it all, if you have a great product or service, it's really easy. If you don't, it's impossible.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Perfectly Mentored. I'm your host, Jason Portnoy. My guest on this episode is Erik Huberman. He is the CEO of Hawke Media, one of the fastest growing marketing consultancy companies in the United States. He grew his team from 7 people to 200 people in just around 6 years. He's now launched Hawke Ventures, which invests in all different types of startups. One of the smartest people I've ever come across in terms of building an agency, in terms of helping brands scale, and in terms of partnerships. You're not going to want to miss this one. Check it out. Erik, thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate you being here.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Look, as a fellow agency owner, I always love hearing how others got into this world of our line of work, of running ads, of helping people build their brands. I personally, unlike a lot of others, did not get into it because I thought it was a cool thing to do and an easy way to make money. I just sort of stumbled into it, I guess. But I'd love to hear what your story is on it.
Yeah, I'd like to think that joining an industry because it's the cool thing to do or an easy way to make money is probably the worst reason to join any industry. So it's
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I joined out of accident and necessity in a lot of ways. So I got out of college and went into real estate, and the whole banking industry collapsed a week later. So that was 2008. And so I started scrambling and ended up launching 3 consecutive e-com businesses, all of which, you know, don't get me wrong, operations are hard and logistics and fulfillment and manufacturing, et cetera. But I never found those to be that difficult, especially to find people that could do them. But marketing is such a moving target that I found that it was really hard to find good marketers. And so I really focused on figuring that world out. And I'm the guy that, like, in college, I made fun of marketing majors because I'm like, what do you do? Draw pretty pictures? Like, I never had an affinity for marketing early on, but then I found it, frankly, to be the hardest part of being an entrepreneur was to market your business. And so I really wanted to focus and learn it because I figured if I knew that, then everything else would come. And so after selling a couple of e-com companies, I had built a knack for marketing. I started helping a bunch of other brands do it. And through that, just realized like I still had a knack and there was an opportunity in the industry because 99% of marketers have no idea what they're doing and there's no barrier to entry and everybody can claim they're a marketer. And as you just alluded to, everyone thinks it's a get rich quick scheme and it's a sexy thing to do. And even though I love the guy, thanks Gary Vaynerchuk to making it like a sexy industry. And so it became the thing, and I am looking forward to it not being sexy anymore. I hope that day comes because I've seen other industries go through the same cycle. So, I ended up accidentally building an agency because I was helping companies, found that they needed more help than me, started hiring people, and fast forward, it's been 7.5 years. We're like 220 people, over 600 brands we manage marketing for. So it's fun.
Amazing. So I'll never forget when I first told someone what I did. They're like, "Oh, my 16-year-old nephew does social media too." I'm like, "Oh,
exactly. Yeah,
cool. Yeah,
we're the exact same.
Exact same."
Yeah,
I mean, our story is kind of similar. I had a clothing brand, and I found marketing and branding the most exciting part of building it and building the business. Lucky enough to have been mentored by Damon John, who stayed a good friend still to this day. And I loved hearing his strategies, and the brainstorming sessions was never around the business anymore. It was about how to brand it and market it. And I was like, cool. And I started helping other people do the same and kind of loved it. But definitely not the get rich quick. I did not experience that.
That rarely, I don't want to say it never exists because I know people that have gotten rich quick, but it's very rare. It is, and to like have that be a part of your strategy is usually a really
correct. So, I mean, I guess for the listeners who maybe want to break through in this space, right? And maybe they're freelancers, maybe they're wanting to build an agency, which I don't know if I'd recommend doing, but that's a different story. But how do you crack through today, like in such a saturated market?
Be really fucking good. Like, to me, here's the issue is a lot of people that want to start an agency are, 20, 21, 22 years old and have never built anything, have never grown anything, don't know anything about marketing. And they're going to struggle. Like, I watch it because we do a lot of M&A now. So we buy a lot of agencies. So we look at 100 a month and look at all these agencies. And a lot of them are built by people that started for the wrong reasons. They started because they think it's a way to get rich quick. And you do make some money initially, but then your reputation goes to shit. And then you'll never create anything big again because you've got a bad reputation. Like, it'll chase you and haunt you if you try to sell yourself as an expert when you're not an expert. And taking the objective definition of expert from Malcolm Gladwell, it's 10,000 hours. If you don't have 10,000 hours of marketing products and services, you're not an expert. And so if you haven't, and that's 5 years full-time, 10 years half-time. So if you haven't spent 5 to 10 years as a marketer, you're not an expert. And so, you've got, so assuming you didn't drop out of, start in high school, which there are people that are in their early 20s that are good marketers, that they do exist. But if you're not that person that's been doing this for maybe a decade, don't go out and start selling yourself as an expert, because then you're going to be seen as a liar and a snake oil salesman, and people are going to see through it fast enough. And what ends up happening, and this is something that was always top of mind for me when I built my company, I want to be able to sell to the smartest people in the world. I want the most admired marketers that I know, or I don't know, but the people that I really respect, to look at my business and look at my team and work with my team and go, you guys are awesome. And that's how I built the company. And funny enough, when we look at like the clients that go sideways, because at this scale, we have clients that go sideways, it's usually the smallest first-time entrepreneurs that have no idea what they're doing, that are trying to figure it out. They're the ones that don't like what we do. But for the people that actually understand marketing and understand what we're providing, love us. Bigger companies love us. So we still want to create that accessibility. But if you're starting out and you're a new marketer, if you're trying to sell to the people that know less than you do and you don't know that much, that is going to be a terrible self-fulfilling prophecy of basically you're going to end up with a business with all the worst clients that don't know what they're doing, versus the savvy ones that are building good businesses that understand your value. And that's the issue you run into. And so when you're just starting out, like, make sure that you have something unique to offer. If you don't, keep working, keep building, like keep looking at for that, opportunity. That's my view of it. And unless you just want to build a small agency and like make some money, and basically you'll end up making the same amount of money you could make working at another job, but you'll get to work twice as hard because you're trying to run a business. So that's the other option.
No, you said two very important things there. And I think one of the things is, one of the lessons I learned is, some people don't want to educate the client, right? They don't want to go on and have them know everything. But an educated client, a client who's smart enough, like you said, to ask the right questions, those are the clients that actually stay with you. It's the ones that you think you're tricking, that because they don't know, those are the ones that end up leaving because they're not smart enough to run their own business, let alone understand what you're doing. So they get pulled aside by the person who's $1,000 a month cheaper than you. Those are the ones that leave. So I love that you said that. The next point that you said that I truly agree with is, you don't necessarily have to build an agency, right? Like I remember a couple of years ago, I was talking to Gary Vaynerchuk about this, and I actually asked him, I said, how would you build VaynerMedia today? He goes, I wouldn't.
Yeah.
He goes, I'm pulled away from all my core strengths. My core strength was strategy and marketing, and now I'm in the people business running 800 people. So I'm curious if you had that same type of, and how you handled that roller coaster of you being a marketer to now being a manager and a people's person.
Yeah, and Gary and I have talked about this too. I like operating. I like managing people. I like the people business. So it's something like, for me, my biggest strength and passion is learning new things and opening new worlds. And for me, my agency has been a platform to do so, because as we grow, and we've grown so fast, it's kept things interesting for me. And we get to, now we have our venture fund, our capital arm. We're partnered with a bunch of other brands. We have a huge portfolio of companies. We're hosting events. Like, we get to do new things all the time because frankly, it drives the growth of the agency. And we have a great team of people. Like, our people are awesome. So we've been able to do it. It's hard, don't get me wrong, but so is everything. So like, it's like, I think the fallacy, and now again, Gary has done an incredible job on the personal brand side, which has driven a whole different side of the business. And I'm always curious to see what he's doing. I respect him a lot, but we have talked about this. Like, we are different in that sense. Like, I am trying to build a conglomerate and a big business in that sense. He's trying to build a pathway to owning the Jets.
Got it. So, I mean, the transition to you wasn't that hard, going from I'm a marketer, I love the marketing side, to now, like, how involved are you on the strategy side now that you have a 200-person team?
Yeah, I mean, I'm involved when I'm asked to be, when I jump in and out, but not often. Honestly, we have a team that's better than me at that at this point, and I look to them for, like, I run our own marketing team right now because we don't have a head of marketing. And so I still am doing a lot of marketing initiatives, but I look to our team for feedback and what's going on, because being in the trenches, you learn a lot more, and so we have a great team that's looking at what companies are doing day in, day out, that now we leverage our own team and we drink our own punch. And so, yeah, the answer is no. And how hard was it? I think everything's hard. I think it would have been a lot harder for me to do the same thing for the past 8 years versus changing what I'm doing. That's me. I don't want, I don't like a routine. I thrive in chaos in that sense. Like, COVID, aside from the disease, but the sort of professional situation from COVID was an opportunity for me to thrive. Because I was like, all right, we got to change everything. What are we changing? Let's change this. Let's get rid of this. Let's do that. Let's do this differently. Like, I love that. That gives me energy. I love that chaos that my team started calling me a wartime leader. Like, when we're at war is when I thrive. When things are stagnant and like chill and status quo is when I end up breaking something, because I'm like, well, we got to try something different.
Yeah, exactly.
Why do we have to try something different? Everything's working. I'm like, no, we got to try something. Like, that's so now, and being self-aware, that's super important as you grow a company like this. Now we have an infrastructure and an executive team and all that to make sure that I don't break anything core to the business, and that when I go off and want to start something new, it's ancillary and can be, complementary. And that's how we ended up with a venture fund and a capital arm and a lot of other things coming down the pike, a book, et cetera.
So at what point, I mean, I think this is a great question for entrepreneurs and business leaders to always want to keep growing, that you run the risk of spreading yourself thin. At what point, like, do you take on, or how do you calculate that I guess, when to take on a new project, when to start spreading yourself past a certain point and always do something new to grow the business? How do you evaluate that?
It's individualized. So there's no clear answer to that. I would say you just have to, like, that is part of the skill, is knowing where that breaking point is. Because I will say, if you can teeter right before it, that you don't burn out and you don't spread yourself too thin, I feel like I've lived there for the most part. And it allows you to be so much more productive, because I can get so much more done than, frankly, most people. And which is why we've created the fastest growing agency, et cetera, because I don't spread myself too thin, but I'm right before it. I'm at the point where there are days where I can't keep up and I have to work, on most weekends, I'm catching up just slightly. And the problem comes in when you have to catch, like, you can't even catch up over the weekend. You just can't get caught up. That's when you've gone too far. And so what I try to do is just push right before that I'm just barely on top of it. Because then that means that we're expanding as fast as we should be. And then being okay with that being the way, understanding your limitation is incredibly important, but also not undercutting it, because it just depends your desire. If you want to chill a little more, you're fine to, but you're not going to build as big of an organization.
And what's your advice? You talked about having a team that's smarter than you, and I totally agree with that. What's your advice to business owners listening right now who are like, okay, well, how do I assemble a dream team? What am I looking for? Like, how do I make sure that I always have the smartest people in the room?
People that complement your superpower. Like mine, I'm a good marketer, good salesperson. But I think at this stage of the company, I'm best to, like, overall vision and network is where I can do it. So let's get people in for everything else. And then figuring out and finding people where their superpower matches their role. If you, like, a head of sales, you need to have specific things. For us, we went with someone that's super data driven, super process driven, kind of calmer, because salespeople individually are so revved up that we have someone that's actually toning it down, because what we found is that person has made it much more predictable, as opposed to really spiky when people are having a good month.
Mm-hmm.
It's great when they break up with their girlfriend or boyfriend. We have a terrible month, and now we've been able to level it out, that we can predict what's happening there. And so it's figuring out what kind of personalities, what kind of skill sets and experience you need in each of those roles, and learning over time. Like, things change too. The business changes. We recently are bringing in a COO from an agency 10 times our size, because we found, like, my current COO, who's my business partner, and I have both hit our limitation on understanding how do we scale a business like this. We've never run a business of 200 plus people, but we want it to be 2,000, 20,000 people. So let's go grab someone that's gotten a lot, a part of the way there, that already has gone, stepped through all the potholes we haven't even seen yet, and help us navigate that. And once we get to the point that we reach his limitations, we'll figure out what that looks like. And I'm not saying move on from people either. Usually you have room to add people at that scale. If we go from 200 to 2,000 people, I don't need to get rid of the guy I hired to help us get there. I need to bring in someone else to maybe complement that, which could be, at that stage, could be corporate development, M&A, could be a completely different business, whatever it is. That's the stuff that we continue to look at, is where are we missing? Where are frustrations coming from, and can we hire someone that can help solve this better than us just trying to figure it out?
But it also takes a special person, right? Your business partner has to put aside his ego of, like, okay, so now I'm being removed from COO, and we're bringing someone better, right?
Well, it's not better, it's different. So, like, he's going into
not better. I meant with a different skill set to take you to where you want to be.
When he's moving into president and helping with expansion and growth and other things that he's good at with me. So that's the thing. It's more just, it goes back to what I said in the beginning of this, which is self-awareness. Like, if I get to the point that there's a better person to be CEO of the company than me, well, fuck it. Great. especially when you're an owner, it's really easy to be okay with that.
Exactly.
And my partner, our now president, is an owner, so that helps.
So, I mean, with you detached from a lot of the day-to-day side of things, I know now you're running the marketing for the agency itself, but how do you stay up to date on all the trends that are going
I
on
would
and
say
all the changes?
there's no detachment. I'm in it as much as anything. So
You know what I mean? I mean, from an owner side of letting your team, like, you're not micromanaging every single client account, like you're not inside the ad accounts going on and checking in what's going on there. So how do you stay up to date on the trends that are moving?
Because I'm still involved enough. Like, that's really the truth, is I'm still helping manage our own marketing. I'm still getting involved in really good and really bad clients, figuring it out. I'm still asking questions. I'm still in meetings. So I still stay very much aware of what's going on. Now, can I go run an ad account on Facebook in a way that could compete with some of the best Facebook marketers? No, I haven't managed ad accounts for a long time. Could I figure it out pretty fast because I know a lot of the nuance? Yeah. And also we have all our partnerships that would bring me up to speed. But yeah, it's really, I'm not, like, I hear every update coming down the pike for all of our platforms and everything. So like it's quick, but I work quickly. So it's like, I get it fed into me constantly with the iOS updates and what does that mean? And we do a lot of internal reporting where it's like, our teams will tell each other like, hey, I'm not going to be able to track Facebook as well because of iOS updates. This is the things we're thinking we're going to do about it. We did our head of Facebook did a full report on how that was going to affect things for the team, because we try to keep that open communication across the company. So I benefit from that too.
So what marketing trends do you see happening in 2021 and beyond?
I think it's going to just be a lot more about owned marketing, meaning like keeping your own customer base, maximizing lifetime value versus just new acquisition. I think we've been in for a decade, we've been in a hyper-focused customer acquisition thing with all these new businesses trying to get new customers. And there hasn't been enough of a focus on how do we make more money off our existing customer base, because that's how you're going to combat. I think advertising costs are going to rise significantly, and we're seeing it. We're seeing our more junior brands that don't have that base struggling because it's just going to get more expensive. It's more competitive. You can track less and it's more competitive. So it's going to get difficult. And I think it's going to be a lot about, owning your own customers and really figuring out how to merchandise and maximize that.
And you've seen so many different accounts, I mean, across the portfolio of clients you have. What do you think the biggest fallacy is, like the biggest myth in our line of work that clients or prospects believe is true that really isn't?
That a rev share deal with an agency is a good idea because your interests are aligned. I'm doing air quotes. I've been through this. I've written articles about this. Like, I have watched over the decade or more than decade that I've been in this industry, every rev share agency either go bankrupt or do shady practices, one or the other. Because the problem is the chances of it aligning perfectly where they're actually making enough money to survive as an agency, but not overcharging the client, is unlikely. So the people that think that that's like a good deal, usually whoever takes that deal doesn't know what they're doing or is about to rip you off. So it's one or the other. And so I advise, if an agency's working with you on a rev share, fucking run. And that's number one. It's happening right now I'm not going to name them, but there's another agency that's been around for a few years that bought another agency that went bankrupt doing this. They're now trying to do it and they're about to go bankrupt.
I started off when I first started, I was doing rev share. Yeah. How quickly did I realize that was a giant headache? Because, in the beginning, if you're a small business, it drastically favors the client. But if you're good at what you do, and I started to say this outright to prospects, I'm like, you want a rev share deal? I'll tell you, in the beginning, it's going to favor you. But if I'm good at what I do, it's going to drastically favor me. And in 2-3 months, you're going to fire me.
Yep.
Because how's the CFO?
If I'm making money, then you're making money. It's great.
That's my favorite. That's my favorite line. If I'm making money, I'd be more than happy to write you those checks.
And this happened the only time we actually took this, it happened. They were supposed to pay us $3,000 a month. They offered a rev share. They offered 10%. We said, sure. And we did $500,000 in 2 months. And they owed us $50,000. I never got that money. They ended up paying us like 15, I think. Oh, and it took me a year to collect it.
Yeah.
I was like, fuck this. And that's how everybody is. They think that they're going to be that way. But from an agency perspective, it's not sustainable because
we have to sue a client as well. And everyone says it, but the truth is, their CFO who's writing the check is sitting there saying, why are we giving these guys $75,000 when I don't make I don't make $75,000 a month. You don't make $75,000 a month. And then they're getting calls from another agency that says, yeah, we could do this at $3,000 a month. Well, guess what? You're going to lose out.
Yeah, exactly.
What's the biggest thing you think companies overlook when it comes to their marketing?
What do they overlook? I think that that retention side, everybody wants to know what their ROAS is, what's the return on ad spend, but they don't. I've looked at multi-billion-dollar, very well-known companies that don't have any email marketing strategy, which is absurd to me because that's where you can make the majority of your money. So email, SMS, chatbots, things that engage your content. Content doesn't have a performance metric that works really well. Like you're not going to be able to perfectly measure how much your content's making you. And so a lot of people shy away from it. And it's such a mistake.
Are you shocked by how many business owners that are still doing well have no clue what their numbers are?
I was shocked. I'm not anymore. It's just, you realize that a lot of people aren't that on top of it. And that's why when you see these huge companies go bankrupt and stuff, you're like, well, yeah.
Got it. And how important is attention and building a brand today more than ever?
How are they what? Sorry.
How important is attention and building a brand today more than ever?
Yeah, it goes back to that with like, if you want to actually have a solid base foundation for your company, you shouldn't, and not everything should be about direct response and driving a sale from an ad. It needs to be about building a brand and a relationship with a customer so they come back even when you're not running ads, because again, it could get really expensive to just advertise over and over.
So if you could give the listeners a blueprint on how to build their brand online or how to build their business online, what would it be?
Say that, you broke up a little bit.
Sorry, if you could give the listeners a blueprint right now on how to build their business online or how to take their business to the next level online, what would it be?
Blueprint today. Yeah, it really is focus on a great product or service and you won't go wrong. Like marketing tip, like it all, if you have a great product or service, it's really easy. If you don't, it's impossible. And so I hate that. I know that's kind of a cheap out, but if you're focused on that, you're focused on keep making your customers happy and there's demand in a market for your product, you're going to do well. So if you're not, it's going to be an uphill battle the entire time. We've made so many mistakes with our business that we've gotten through because people love our service and we do a good job, that you can make a lot of mistakes and have a lot more you have a lot more bandwidth to do things when you have something that at core people really want and need.
But that comes also down to client selection, right? How important is client selection for you and your team?
No, I actually don't, not working with shitty people or irrational people is something we are adamant about. Other than that, we're not that big. I think, the whole, I think there's sort of a pretentious side to being picky with your clients that people justify in their own head, like, oh, we're not taking on clients, et cetera. And to me, that is the antithesis of what I created my business for. Our mission statement is accessibility to great marketing for everyone. I'm not a fan of that. Now, that's sort of a subjective to each their own. But I built my business because I was so frustrated with the fact that good marketers were really hard to find and hard to work with. And I thought that that was ridiculous. Why can't people find accessibility to this? Because I don't think marketing is that difficult in terms of executing best practices, but there's a lot of snake oil out there. So I don't think that it needs to, on the agency side, being picky with clients is important. Now, what I will say is, not working with irrational people. When you find that a client's irrational or unreasonable, I would try to get away from them as quick as possible because it just gets worse and worse the longer you work with someone like that.
So, I'd love to hear in your mind, how does that play out for you guys? How do you then filter out through this all? Are you guys quick on firing clients? Are you guys, how does that work internally?
Yeah, we're very quick if that happens. We're dealing with one right now that a client was really inappropriate to an employee, and we're like, we're done. We have a 30-day notice that goes both ways. So, we're going to wrap this up. Good luck. We're not going to, when it comes to berating, again, when it's irrational, an angry client because we did something wrong, we're not going to be shitty to, but an angry client that's just irrational and expectations won't be reset. We'll try to reset expectations and do a few things, but if someone's just, I've worked with 3,000 plus brands, there's just, frankly, bad people out there. They're a low percentage, but when you're at that scale, you run into them.
And so, one of the things I liked is that you said there's a lot of snake oil people out there, especially in our line of work. Marketers are not very well trusted or very well liked right now. What are some of the questions you think the listeners should be asking their agencies before they work with someone?
Have you taken a company from where I am to where I want to be? And what does that look like? Because that's, by the way, hiring anyone too. When I hire people now, especially senior people, it's like, who have you done this job for that you've gotten them to where we're trying to be? I don't want you to fucking learn on my time. That's not what I want my agency to do. That's not what I want my senior executives to do. At some point, if they've gotten you far enough and they've earned a position to learn on your time, great. Like if you've been with an agency for 3 years and you're now their biggest client, but they're still crushing it for you and they're learning fast enough, that I wouldn't cut that, because it's sort of the bird in the hand thing. Like, you've got a good agency, don't take the risk on another one. We've watched so many of our clients leave us after a couple of years thinking they need a fresh start, and the company just goes literally out of business. We've had it happen several times because it's like the new agency wasn't good. They see it sold well, but when they got into it, they weren't good and they're gone. And I love the line. I hear it all the time when we lose a client that we're doing well with. Well, maybe I'll come back crawling on my hands and knees. I'm like, you won't, because by the point you realize how fucked you are, you're not going to be able to afford to come back. So we've seen it too many times, but and it doesn't happen as often anymore. Our credibility's gotten a lot more solid, but it does happen. And so I think when you're first hiring, finding someone that can at least spend the next 6, 12 months, maybe 2 years, already have, they're running a playbook they've already run, is really helpful.
One of the things I like about you, and I've been following you for a bit, is something I think we have in common. You do a lot of things that may seem like they don't move the needle forward, right? They may not look from an outsider like they're moving the needle forward, but from a long-term play, it actually has crazy benefits. How do you maintain that focus on the long game over the short game, and how do you get your clients to do the same?
It's a constant conversation. It's setting expectations, I think. And like when you report against the long game and when you talk about the long game, it helps. And sometimes you just have to be blunt and be like, hey, are you trying to build a month-long company or a decade-long company or a century-long company? Like, what are you trying to do here? Because some clients want the short game. They just need a quick win. But it is at the cost of long-term. You kind of alluded to it, like how important is it to build brand? Short-term, not that important. Long-term, critical. So short-term, we can run a bunch of Facebook ads and see if we can drive some sales, but that's only going to last a few months before you saturate that if you're not doing other things.
Let's talk about Hawke Ventures. Why was that the next step for you?
Well, there's been a lot of steps between that, but what happened was I invested in a friend's company. He came to me. I never wanted to invest in startups, but a friend of mine was pivoting to e-com and said, hey, we want you to invest. We want you on the cap table. And I was like, guys, I don't invest in startups. And they literally said, we're not asking, we're telling you. You just tell us how much. So I put some money in, and that company is 200 times what I invested in it, and like scaled really quickly. And so I looked at that and went, okay, I should start putting some small amount of money to work here because there's like a huge upside here. And it wasn't a lot of risk. I put a small check in. So I started to invest more angel invest, and it went really, really well. We just had one of our angel investments announced in the press. We announced it, like Tapcart just raised another $50 million at a huge valuation. I don't remember what it exactly was. And we invested in their first round when it was worth $2.5 million. Like big numbers that we're starting to get, 50x, 100x, 200x from these things that were like, hey, we got to a point where we realized, well, we only have so much money we can play with off our balance sheet. Maybe we should start playing with other people's money. And, we get just like any fund, we'll get a piece of that, but then we can leverage more money and go further with this. And so we decided to raise a fund. That was a couple of years ago. And now we've invested out of the fund. And I think 15 companies is where we're at. And the whole thesis is companies we're strategic to, mostly marketing software that we can deploy across our clients and things.
And so what do you look for? What's the telltale sign of something that you believe is going to be a success?
Telltale sign of something that's going to believe I would say, well, an easy one, if it's a marketing software and our team loves it and wants to use it because they're so time constrained that if it's actually something worth their time, that's a big sign. And we have 600 clients we're actively managing. That's a sign that for all the companies we're representing, we found something that they want to work with. That's the best. That's where it's easy. And we have a few of those, and those are going to be our biggest winners, frankly. And then it's stuff that we use that we need. We see so much that if it's something we're actually going to take the time to implement and use, whether it's for ourselves, for our clients, et cetera, that says a lot. And so that's where we like to invest in the things that we're going to leverage too.
Love it. Something you're also very good at is forming partnerships. How important is that for business growth, especially now, again, in terms of building a long sustainable company? And what advice do you have on finding the right strategic partners?
It's just symbiotic. It's where can you help a company and be a holy grail for them and them do the same for you. And we have a great head of partnerships that did this well, where we send out a lot of introductions and leads and become such a lucrative partner for our partners that they want to do the same. And so we end up, we do believe in the tide rises all ships kind of methodology and building a community around us. And frankly, like during COVID, we crushed it because of that, because we had this community that we could all look out for each other. So while we're, there's a hole in the ship with all these clients leaving because they're shut down, et cetera, we were able to bring on a bunch more because we're all looking out for who's still spending, who's still growing. And then obviously e-commerce crushed it. So we were able to have that because of that ecosystem where we're all looking out for each other. And so finding a way to build that, but you have to add value. You have to be valuable too. You can't just be like, hey, yes, we get that all the time. People call us and they're like, it'd be great if you could send us a bunch of clients. We're like, I know it would. Appreciate you asking.
You gotta love the fact that they asked, right? Like most people don't even ask. At least they asked.
Yeah, no, it's a fair question, but I think honestly they lose the opportunity versus, and also the question of like, how can I help you? I have a boilerplate answer that's easy, but most people are like, I don't know, who the fuck do you do? So like, I think it's really important to understand how you can help the person, be like, hey, listen, sounds like you need this, I need this. So I'll send you all this if you can send me all this. And that's when you get someone intrigued because you found a way to be valuable to them.
Do you think that's better than just leading with the value first? Like, do you get a little turned off when someone goes for an ask, but like I scratch your back, you scratch mine type thing?
I don't, because I think it's actually more transparent and authentic. Some people are altruistic, but everybody has an angle at some point, even if it's to feel good. Like I truly believe that like even people that are hyper charitable are doing it selfishly because it makes them feel good. That doesn't mean it's a bad thing, but they're doing it because of something. And so maybe you get those people that feel good just giving you business, and they exist, and that's great. But I don't think you're going to turn people off being like, hey, I want to help you. You want to help me. Like, this is what I could use help with. Because I think when you're shy about that, you're not going to get as much help either. Every time I talk to people from the start of this business, it was like, hey, anyone that needs marketing help, I'd love to meet them. That's it. That's it. Just introductions. That's all I want. Never went any further than that. And then like, oh yeah, I'm like, hey, you're working on a drone company. Well, I know another guy with a drone company. I should introduce you guys. Like whatever it is, I always tried to do something, and intros were always something I was good at. So just connecting people, and if you're asking them to connect to you, is a good one too.
What's been your biggest regret as an entrepreneur?
Biggest regret? I don't have that many regrets, man. My only regret in life that I look at is not studying abroad, because I feel like I missed the opportunity to just like bounce around Europe as a college kid and have a blast. My siblings did it, and one in Madrid and one in Paris. And I was like, God, that's awesome. I've been able to go to Europe enough since, but that's literally the only thing I can think of that I feel like I just made a wrong decision versus like, everything I've done has led to this, and I can't believe where I've ended up. Like, I feel very fortunate, lucky, happy. And so even the challenges I've gone through, I love them, because like one of the biggest things I've learned as an entrepreneur is that being a business owner, you're going to deal with crazy shit and problems all the time. That's the job. You're going to get all the problems that nobody else can deal with and solve. If other people could solve them, you're not going to hear about them. So you get the big shit. And there was a realization, like after like we kept saying, and I think almost every entrepreneur is guilty of this early on. Well, once we solve that, then we're good. Once we solve that, then we're good. And then I was watching the news about the trade wars with China and Tim Cook talking to it, and how, Apple iPhones were going to cost a lot more and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, holy shit, the biggest company in the world is still dealing with massive problems. Like this never ends. Unless I just decide I don't want to do it anymore, it will never end. So once you accept that that's what you sign up for, there's no regrets. You're just like, yeah, this is the job. I can stop when I'm not a victim. Like I can stop being an entrepreneur any day I want to. So I never put myself in a place that I have to do this. So now I'm doing it by choice. And so when the problems come up, you're like, yeah, of course, that's the job. Like it's like, being an exterminator and showing up at a house. Like, what do you mean there's bugs? we used to tell this to our employees, but we didn't think about it ourselves. I say we, my partner and I, and then we really came to the point where like now it's always something. It's always going to be something. And so now when it happens, and thankfully this realization happened pre-COVID. So when COVID happened from a business perspective, we're like, yeah, okay, the world's shutting down. Something was bound to happen. This is going to be it. Let's go figure it out. And you stop getting emotional about it. And it's nice. It becomes fun.
And I mean, I don't know about you, but I think entrepreneurship sometimes can be a lonely ride at times. And how do you stay motivated? How do you stay focused and optimistic when things are bad? Whether it's a client, something as small as a client leaves or personal matters. I mean, you seem pretty optimistic. You seem like very grateful and humble to be where you're at right now. Uh, but how do you endure that roller coaster?
I I really tempered the low lows and high highs. Just to be honest, is like I talked to another entrepreneur about this today, where it's like it's kind of a shame because I don't get the same high off the big celebrations anymore. Like we have a win, it's like cool, sounds great, think we did it, cool, next. But then the low lows come, and you're like, yeah, okay, what are we gonna do to solve it? Okay, next. Like it just both of it tempers. You just learn to be kind of even keel about it. That doesn't change my happiness, but you don't have sort of the literally bipolar feeling of like everything's great, everything sucks, like that people talk about in entrepreneurship. I actually think that people need to go through, whether it's therapy or some sort of internal discovery, to get out of that roller coaster. Understand that your business success is not tied to your life, and like separate yourself a little bit and then work your ass off and make it happen and do everything you need to do. But yeah, I mean, that quote unquote roller coaster, the ups and downs, like it's an everyday thing, and it's you just get to the point where you just don't let it emotionally affect you as much, or you need to. And you see that from most successful entrepreneurs and bigger CEOs, is like no matter what you throw at them, you kind of see this like stone face, like, yeah, okay, sounds good, like what are we going to do? Like it's like this is what we signed up for. You can walk away at any point, and I think people forget that.
I'm a big believer in up leveling, investing in yourself, and always getting better, and always being inside the right rooms. How do you stay, in the right rooms? How do you invest in yourself? How do you continually grow?
It's similar to the partnership thing. Make sure you're adding value to those rooms and you keep getting invited back and getting invited to other things. If you can be helpful, and like, thankfully my talent's marketing and sales and building these teams. And so I can come in, and I usually like to give a lot of information. I'm a pretty open book in how I do things, if you can't tell on this. So I try to do that with other people, and it ends up getting me a lot of invites and invited back, and, a lot of mutual respect out there. And so,
You mean
uh,
there's no hidden secret sauce when it comes to marketing?
exactly. And I think, by the way, that was like the most valuable thing I was ever taught as a marketer, was a guy named Chris Nella, which I mentioned. I wanted to build my business to be hired by someone that was really skilled, not junior. Chris was the guy I had in mind, and he ended up hiring us when he was at Tradesy. He ran marketing for Shoe Dazzle, Tradesy, Soul Society. He was at Snapchat. Guy was a brilliant marketer. And when I was starting out, I got introduced to him and went and talked to him, and basically had an hour conversation about how marketing worked. And the gist of it was, oh yeah, you just throw shit at a wall and see what sticks, but be good at seeing what sticks. That's the key, which is measuring and data and all that. But try a bunch of shit out. And I was like, it's really not that complicated. You just have to have enough of a good product or service that you're able to test a bunch of things, and some things will work, and you double down on those. And that is the secret.
I love that you said that. I mean, I love when media buyers I meet are talking about all the different hacks and strategies they have in place. And I'm like, I don't care about any of that. You have a good product and offer, I could literally throw it at anyone and people will buy it. So I think that's the number one most important part, is have a good product and offer. So I agree with you on that. We'll end with this: the must read book and must watch movie for any entrepreneur.
So book, I'd say Appetite for Self-Destruction by Steve Knopper, because you've never heard of it. I read that book when I graduated college, and I was getting into after real estate, getting into the music business. It's about the music industry's appetite for self-destruction, meaning their failure to pivot and adapt. And that's why, like, the fact that Universal Music doesn't own Spotify is ridiculous. The fact that Apple owns iTunes, like it's because they've always been resistant to change. And so hubris and cockiness, you have to be super careful. So as things are successful, you also have to watch for your sort of the Uber to your taxi company. And that's always stuck with me. Great book, written well, a guy named Steve Knopper that wrote for Rolling Stone forever and now is at Billboard. So great book. Movie, for an entrepreneur. I like Founder movie, even though it's so up the fairway, more than Social Network. I think Social Network celebrated a lot of the bullshit in entrepreneurship. I think Founder movie is a little more real, in the sense of like, Ray Kroc didn't start McDonald's. He frankly, in a lot of ways, stole it. And I think like being aware of how the world really works in some ways, sort of like what Ben Horowitz wrote about in The Hard Thing About Hard Things. Like, I think it's just,
and he never flipped the burger in his life. So
right. Yeah.
yeah.
Literally. Yeah. So exactly. So yeah, I think it's really that you're going to learn a lot more from that story than you are from The Social Network, which is a dude got lucky with a hot or not adaptation in his dorm room, and then timing and luck and circumstance and still some cool things. But I think there's a lot more to learn from sort of the grind kind of movies. I'm sure there's one that I'm going to think of after this too. I've never thought the movie thing, but there's probably another movie out there that I'm like, this one, hands down.
No worries. You can hit me up on Instagram. I'll edit it. I'll edit it in.
My first response was going to be Caddyshack. I don't know what that has to do with entrepreneurship. It's a great movie.
It's a great movie. Erik, for the listeners who want to reach out, maybe they want you to invest, maybe they want to work with you, whatever it is, or maybe they just want more transparency and honest answers, or they actually really want to know the movie that could help change their life. How do they find you?
Yeah, @Erik Huberman on all the social platforms. Feel free to shoot me a message. And then if you want to like look at working with us, we do free audits for anyone. So you can go to hawkemedia.com and sign up for an audit. And then also have our podcast where we're interviewing people on their journey stories of how to be successful. So that's just
how do you like the podcasting?
I like it because I've been able, like, frankly, the reason I do it is because I've come across a lot of amazing people throughout my career. And I've never been able to say, hey, you want to go sit down for an hour and grab coffee so I can just hear your life story? They're not going to do that. But if I throw this microphone up, which I joked is not even plugged in, it is, but my running joke. But I throw this mic up and say, let's do it on Zoom. And I get some incredible people to just spend an hour with me to tell me, like, how'd you get where you are? And now the most rewarding thing is no story is alike. There's not some consistent path to being successful in like all walks of life, all backgrounds, all very supportive parents, very abusive parents, like everything. There's no consistent path, which I love, because if you listen to enough of these, you start to realize that like your story will match with someone and kind of give you a clarity on how it can go.
I agree. And no stories alike, but one of the things that I've been seeing is there's always a common pattern, right? The ones that achieve a certain level of success, they all have certain common traits or common characteristics that allow them to be that successful.
That's the fun thing. I haven't seen that. The only thing I've seen is went for it. That's it. That is the one thing, is they swung the bat and they went, no specific talent, no specific desire, skill set, passion, none of it. Just like, they just did it.
Well, that's the number one thing I see is mindset, right? Like they had that mindset.
Even mindset, unless you just mean mindset as someone that goes and does it, because mindset, I'd say there were people that doubted themselves, that were like, what the fuck am I doing? There were people that were like, I'm going to be the biggest person in the world from the start. There were people that didn't even know why they fell into the industry. There were people that wanted to do it from when they were 4 years old. Like, that's what I mean, is like that even the mindset has been super different.
See, it's funny. I had an exact opposite. I listened to you and I could see common characteristics of when I interviewed Grant Cardone and Damon John and Rebecca Minkoff. Like I see same traits.
When I think you just named, I think I'm more of the stereotypical entrepreneur, of someone that like, I've wanted to do this forever. I've always wanted to be this, but then I interview people that were like, they started entrepreneurship at 40 and their entire life was, working as a, waitress and then odd jobs and things like that. People fall into it sometimes too. And then you do realize that, like, I don't know why society teaches us that entrepreneurship is a risk. I feel like the risk is, and I hate to say this because I do have a lot of employees, but the risk of working for someone and them having an off day or mismanaging the business, to me, is a lot higher than the risk of entrepreneurship. Now, my stepdad always said something to me very poignant as he watched me build my business, was, you're never going to get to check out at the end of the day. Most employees get to go home and go do what they want to do. When they go on vacation, they're out, that kind of thing. You don't get to do that as a business owner. So there's a trade-off, and then it's the people that feel the trade-off's worthwhile.
Yeah, I just think we're wired differently. I truly believe that.
Yeah.
Cool. Erik, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time.
Yep. Thank you.
Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you want, check out our most recent video over here. And this one is the one YouTube thinks you'll like. But if you really enjoyed watching, please do me a favor, like and subscribe over here. Thank you so much.